Okay, and while the soup is cooking, it would be an excellent time to heat up the basil vodka, or Vodak if you will. I'm heating up in the container it's in because I'm lazy and I don't have any glass containers quite that small. And while that's heating up, we can go ahead and take our calcium chloride we measured out, the 2.5 grams of it, and dump it into 100 grams of water, also known as 100 mils of water, unless you're using some kind of moon water. It shouldn't take too much effort to dissolve it. It's really water soluble. And once it is, we'll let that sit. That'll be the setting bath for the caviar that will hopefully turn out very well indeed. Close enough on that. We'll wash off our fork. We're about to stir in alginate with the very same fork. Not quite warm enough yet. So we'll have some delicious cider, because that's not quite warm enough yet. Here's our tomato bisque, which is simmering currently. The tomato doesn't look very tomato bisque-y right now, but once these giant chunks of tomato here get blended up in our KitchenAid in Empire Red, it will be a delicious tomato bisque with hopefully delicious vodka caviar. We'll check on that now. It's lukewarm. Almost there. It may say something on the little bottle there, but it's lies, I assure you. That is not but vodka and basil. Here we see B-roll of KitchenAid. And here we have our 250 milligrams of sodium alginate. You will of course need a scale that can measure 250 milligrams. Go to Deal Extreme, spend $9 and get this. It's useful in your kitchen. Now we're going to dump the alginate into the just now barely warm enough basil vodka, and it will clump initially. Alginate tends to want to do that. But if we stir it with a fork, and keep on stirring it quite a lot, take it off the heat of this one, you'll see it begins to turn cloudy in there with the alginate and the vodka. It's almost syrupy, but not quite. And we're going to take this back over here while still stirring it to avoid clumps. We're going to pour it into our Pyrex measuring cup. This is approximately 25 grams of basil vodka with 250 milligrams of sodium alginate for a 1% solution. And now we only have one shot at this. We're going to pour this into the calcium chloride setting bath.
Okay.
We're going to try to do it a drop at a time because I forgot to get a syringe. It probably won't work that well, but we'll try anyway. You can see it forms little globules the second it hits the calcium chloride bath. The calcium chloride is very salty, so if you taste excessive salt on your caviar, it means you probably didn't rinse it well enough, which you should, because calcium chloride tastes disgusting. Some of these are a little big because I'm not using a syringe like I should. And that's but all the vodka. And as you can see, even now, they hold together and they form little caviars. Some larger ones that I won't use, but there's some smaller ones that should be very nice. These larger ones end up more like blobs, but that's okay. And what we want to do is we want to strain this out hopefully the caviar will not fall through the strainer. Put in my dishes. You see here it actually holds its shape very well, to the point where you can run cold water over it and nothing bad will happen. And wash out your calcium chloride bowl very well. Well, not very well, but well enough. And then dump your caviar back in. It will look really terrible, but will separate out nicely into little spheres on the soup. And cut. And I've decided that while the bisque looks delicious, it is lacking a certain something. So I'll open up our cabinet, where many fine things are. I will pass over the maple syrup, because it's not really appropriate. And instead, Frank's Red Hot sauce. I put that shit on everything. Frank's Red Hot sauce goes in, not too much. I may have already fraudulently added some earlier. Frank's Red Hot is delicious and full of cayenne. And we'll stir that in. Begins to smell a little bit like Frank's Red Hot.
Can you stir it again? Cool.
Never hurts to stir. Okay. Now some of you may remember my gimmick wherein I drink the same amount my dish drinks. You may also remember that we put 25 grams of vodka, the relatively cheap and plastic bottled Polar Ice vodka, into our caviar. Here we have a Clemson Tigers shot glass that was given to me in a Something Awful Secret Santa. We'll use that on the scale. We will then tare the scale so we can accurately weigh. And we will pour 25 grams of vodka. Approximately into that. Lid goes back on. From digital scale to your cook's mouth. Clemson Tigers. Chaim. That is some cooking right there. It is. Note that despite alcohol making everything more fun, the stirring process has not yet been enhanced by that vodka. It's just too soon. Stirring things is still boring. And welcome back. Those of you following the program may know that I have had some vodka to go with my vodka caviar. So if I fuck anything up, it's because of drinking. We're giving this a final stir, turning the heat off. And this, because I made a half recipe based on my half-assed recipe, oddly enough, will go directly in the KitchenAid all in one go. Forums user Caridian has advised me this is the proper way to go, as opposed to cooling it first. I'm just going to wash out this pot really fast, because it's going back in this pot. And we're washing this pot out quickly, because the soup is going to go back in the pot when it's finished being pureed. Although first it will go through a strainer, which we'll also wash very quickly. We'll cut this, I know. Dirt, dirt. Washing pretty half-assed because there's nothing actually in it. The strainer goes onto the pot in a very handy fashion. And now, the Empire Red KitchenAid is going on puree. Liquefy. Pardon the noise. Take off the lid, watch out, it will still be very hot. I'm just coming off the stove. And we'll pour it through our strainer into the pot. that strain out a little bit, just to get those chunks of tomato skin off of that, or tomato skin, if you will. We'll take our strainer and put it in our sink directly. Then the pot goes back on the heat at a low heat, medium 4, if you're using a non-gas stove like I am. And the whipping cream arrives. I'm not going to use very much of this, but it says 1/8 of a cup, but I'm not going to measure 1/8 of a cup because that's not very much at all. So we're just going to use a splash. That was probably actually 1/8 of a cup, if not more. Stir that up a little bit. It says to whisk it, but I'm not whisking a thing. And this, although it could be redder if I'd added tomato paste or something, is our delicious tomato bisque that we'll be having tonight. I'm now going to put it in some bowls, because one puts soup into bowls. I'm doing it over here in our prep zone with the MacBook Pro power cable, which is essential in any kitchen. Just a little bit. We're having some delicious garlic toast with it tonight. Watch out for the edge. This has dairy in it, so it will burn, and you don't want that. Put it off the heat. Now we'll add our garnish. The garnish just barely floats on the soup, but it does add a little bit of color to it, and hopefully a delicious basil taste. We will also add a little bit of black pepper to this soup. This is not fresh ground because I have no mill to fresh ground pepper, but just ever so little of it. And here we have tomato bisque. Delicious.